In this Diablo 4 video, which is going to be the last one for our beta period, I'm going to be showing you the Blight Commander Necromancer build, which is a Necromancer build that focuses on summoning lots of minions and building up dots over time on enemies so that they bleed out. If you've been looking for an alternative to the Corpse Explosion build, which is probably the most meta build in the game right now, then this build is for you. So first, let's take a look at Blight, which is the namesake of this build. This is the core ability you're going to be using. And you usually want to lead off combat with this ability in order to create a pool of poison around on the ground. And once you have this upgraded, it's going to slow enemies, and your minions and you are going to deal increased damage to enemies standing in this Blight. Keep in mind that damage over time effects in this game stack, so the more you can stack up damage over time effects, the more damage you're going to deal in a hurry. Blight is a really good way to begin combat because it's not only going to get that dot on the ground early, it's going to slow enemies, which allow you to deal more damage to them if you have any damage to slowed on your gear, which is not hard to find. And also because you and your minions are going to deal extra damage. So you want to lead off with that if you can. Bone Splinters is your basic attack for this build. It sort of shoots out bones in like a cone in front of you, and we're going to upgrade this all the way up to Initiate's Bone Splinters. This makes it so that it has a 20% chance per hit to make enemies vulnerable for a few seconds. This, of course, increases your damage against them and your minions' damage against them, so it's good to have. You won't need this all the time, but it's a good way to add damage when you're used all the corpse explosions you can use and you have, you know, all your essence drained on blights, getting damage over time on the ground. This is kind of the way you're going to add to your minions' damage while you're kind of generating more essence. And then obviously we also have Corpse Explosion here. I don't think you can pretty much play a Necromancer without some form of Corpse Explosion because the corpse resources on the ground pretty much go to waste if you don't have some version here. However, we have it differently set up than the Corpse Explosion build, and it's just part of this build. It isn't the focus. And we're actually upgrading it all the way through the Blighted Corpse Explosion build, which actually does shadow damage over time. And once you have it upgraded, obviously it does it in a wider radius as well. So you're going to be exploding corpses all around that are going to add to this damage over time. So you're also getting with your Blight. So you're going to have lots of dots on your enemies that are just going to slowly or quickly bleed out depending on how much dots you have stacked on them. So when it comes to your passives here, you can either use Hewed Flesh, which makes it so your lucky hit has a chance to create a corpse when you deal damage, which will give you more corpses to use. Or you can use Grim Harvest, which will give you back resources when you consume a corpse with Corpse Explosion or by summoning like a skeleton or something like that. And you will be using that periodically, so that's a good way to generate essence as well. I recommend taking either one of those. It's kind of up to you. I recommend using Grim Harvest, but you can use Hewed Flesh if you want. That way you can use your Blight more often and stack dots harder. Corpse Tendrils is another really good ability for this build because it pulls enemies in and stuns them by using a corpse. And this works really well when you're stacking up dots, you know, from your Corpse Explosion and from your Blight that are pools of poison. If you can pull enemies into those pools of poison and stun them inside of it, it works really well for damage. So this is not a bad ability to have. It's kind of a one-point wonder here. You don't really need to add any more to it, but just getting one of those off periodically is really good for this build as well. And the ultimate ability we're using for this build is Army of the Dead. This has a very long cooldown, but what it does is over 7 seconds, it summons these skeletons that explode when around enemies. This is a screen clearer. And if you'd have the Prime upgrade of this, it's going to make it so they have a 15% chance to leave behind a corpse when they explode. And since this is a lot of skeletons, this can generate a lot of corpses, which you can then use to stack dots all over the screen with Corpse Explosion. And you can use it to use your Tendrils as well in order to pull enemies in. So this is really, really good for this build. Obviously, this is a minion-focused build. We haven't gotten to minions part of it yet. That kind of goes with the theme. So obviously, besides these abilities, because this is a minion master type build, we're going to have Raised Skeleton, and Summoner build would be complete without these. And when we're setting up our Book of the Dead, we're going to go for, with the Warriors, we're going to go with the Skirmisher setup with the first upgrade that allows you to have an extra Skirmisher. This is going to give you 5 total. And then if you have the Bloodgetter's Aspect, this is going to give you 7 Skirmishers on the screen, all dealing damage, which is absolutely fantastic. And when it comes to our Skeletal Mages, we're going to go with the cold version of them. We're going to go with the first upgrade that allows you to gain 2 essence every time they hit with their primary attack. This is going to help build up your resources for you so that you can use Blight more often. It's a good way to gain more essence, and you go through your essence very, very quickly with this build, as most Necromancers do. So it's a great way to gain essence. And just like with the Bloodgetter's Aspect for Skeletal Warriors, there is a Viscous Aspect that gives you 2 more mages. So you'll have a huge army between the addition of a single Skirmisher, 2 more Skirmishers with Bloodgetters, and 2 more with Viscous Aspect. If you have all these things set up this way, you're going to have a giant army, which is absolutely deadly to enemies. And besides these abilities, you're obviously going to want to take passives in Skeletal Warrior Mastery, Skeletal Mage Mastery. But this is going to increase the life totals of these, and as well as the damage that they do, since a big part of your damage with this build is coming from them and your dots. you want them to have increased damage. So any extra points you can spare for Skeletal Warrior Mastery and Skeletal Mage Mastery are something you want to do. Again, the idea with this build is to get Blights down on the ground early to get damage over time on enemies, slow them, and also make it so that they take more damage from you and your minions, converge on them with your minions, and then, you know, drop more Corpse Explosions and Tendrils to group them up on there, just wiping them out with damage over time with your minions and stuff. Remember that you can use the abilities of your minions with the active abilities on your bar. So even though you use the ability to summon your skeletal minions, you can also press it again to heal them and make their attack speed increase for a short period of time. So make sure that you do this when you're in like tough fights or there's a big crash pull. Use the active ability on the skeletal minions. So that wraps up our Blight Commander build, which is sort of the Minion Master style of Necromancer compared to the Corpse Explosion. I hope you guys enjoyed our videos on this. These were quick and dirty videos. Obviously, at the launch of the game, they'll be more comprehensive, going through the skill trees more, going through the exact process like we did with our Diablo 2 videos. These ones I was just trying to get up quick to give you an idea of what you can do during the beta period so that they were relevant, and the beta wasn't over. Admittedly, there's only a little bit left here for this one. I just wanted to give an other idea of what you can do with Necromancers besides Corpse Explosion. Stay tuned, we're going to have a final impressions video from the second beta, kind of talking about our overall experience with everything now that we played even more hours, what we think so far. Kind of wonder if this game should be delayed or not. We'll explore that in that video, so stay tuned for that.